Welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. Our interviews are mainly recorded to be transcribed, but every now and again we release the audio in a series we call Post-Burnout.com interviews. If you enjoy what we do, be sure to subscribe. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, we speak with singer David Arlo. He talks about how he became a musician, the talented producers he has worked with, his new track Speeding, getting signed to the Sony affiliated major label Arista Records, his upcoming show made by the producers of Netflix's Sex Education, his recent musical Reset, and more. So yeah.
Brilliant. I am in London, in Hackney, East London.
Yeah. So actually, that was the first thing I was going to ask. Actually, is my understanding was that you're from Hackney. I believe from kind of a Nigerian descent. And
Yeah.
I was wondering, how do you think that kind of influenced, your art in a sense? Because I think that's kind of I don't know, like an interesting perspective. You don't really, I think, see much in popular music, you know?
No, you're right. But I think so. My parents are Nigerian. I was born here, obviously. I don't know. It's a good question. I wouldn't say sonically there's any sort of like references there, but I am a massive Afrobeats fan. I love Burna Boy. I love Wizkid. I love Oxlade, Rema. So I don't know. Apart from enjoying it. And if I go to a club or I'm in my car, it's the first thing I want to listen to. It's what's on my sort of playlist. But I suppose in terms, and I think that's always been something that's quite interesting with me, is that I've never really listened to the music that I make, if that makes sense. As in, not necessarily my music, but I suppose the sort of contemporaries that you'd put me next to. I've never really that's not what I sort of listen to in my spare time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to pop music. I'm always listening to sort of hip hop. I listen to quite a lot of Afrobeats at the moment. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the most influence I'd say it has in my life.
Yeah.
Is I actually listen to.
But just in general, I think everyone is sort of a product of their environment and a product of their upbringing in a sense. Do you think your kind of upbringing has influenced your art in any way? Because I think if I'm correct, there was I think I heard an interview you gave where you were kind of saying that there was a certain level of kind of stoicism that was expected, where it's I think now you were mentioning how for example, when you signed to the label, there's a lot of talks now of people being very open about their mental health and going to therapy and stuff like that, and it's a bit more open to talking about those kind of struggles.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think age, being really young when I first started and sort of coming from where I come from, I think you sort of want to be a bit more guarded.
Yeah.
I think I'll always will be. I think I am a very private individual anyway, but I think it's really hard to sort of write the music that I'm writing without being honest.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, I've sort of suffered from that because I'm writing songs that are super emotional, super heartfelt, but not really being as honest as I can be.
Sure.
And I think that probably has a lot to do with the way I was brought up and where I come from and the environment I grew up in. And I think, like I said, as it comes with age, I've gotten older, surrounded myself with other people. And yeah, I think what I was just doing another interview and somebody was like, what would you say is different about this version of you? I would say it's a lot more honest. I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to be more honest about the music and where it's come from and the troubles that I'm facing I faced when making the music. So yeah, I would say that's definitely been something that's been new with this record, is that I've definitely decided to talk a lot more and also just be a bit more honest.
Yeah. And I think now, would you think it was fair to say, because obviously you've been making music pre-pandemic, I think that's how we divide our lives now, is pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. But it's like you've been making music since about at least 2018 as far as I'm aware. And but now it seems like there's a real kind of reset where it's like it seems like there's this new direction you're going in, and it seems like you're fully committed to this. Yeah, I was wondering, I don't know, like how you feel like your music now kind of differs from how you first began, either musically or lyrically.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I feel like it's definitely been a reset. And that's a good word to use, actually. I remember I might start using that.
No, no, we're second.
Good word to use this. It definitely feels like a reset. I think I've always had a very stop-start relationship with music.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the music industry is very interesting in the sense, especially for new artists, is that especially when you are not backed by a label, it's very hard to be consistent and to consistently put out music of a certain level. And what we're constantly seeing is that the environment, fans, gatekeepers, whatever you want to call people, they react to artists who are consistently putting out bodies of music. Yeah. And if you are not in a financial position to do that, it can be really difficult because life just happens in between. Like, you've got bills to pay, you've got family, people get ill, you get ill, all of these things happen. And I think sometimes maybe we don't apply enough grace to people going through those situations. And we sort of just assume that it's like, oh, they must have a whole body of work ready to chuck out. Like, music videos are expensive. Yeah. Artwork is expensive. All of these things are really expensive. And it's like, I think for me, I think you have to make that conscious decision whether or not you want to do music. As much as it's a passion and a vocation and something that I love, it's also a job.
Yeah.
And I think this has been sort of like this new sort of phase in David Arlo has been like, yeah, this is what we're doing, this is what I'm doing. And I've been really fortunate to have a label that's supporting me, and we're able to be more consistent with it, I'd say.
Yeah.
And there's more of a plan and all of that good stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, the label you're talking about was Arista, excuse me, I'm probably mispronouncing it, music. Yeah, I mean, probably most famous for Whitney Houston. Yeah, I was wondering how you kind of got involved in them.
Yeah. So Arista obviously is a Sony label, and it was during the pandemic, and the president of the label heard some demos and got in touch and was just like, hey, you guys, we've got connected through someone mutually in the business. He heard some demos, and that was it, really. It was weird because we spoke for quite a long time. I want to say a good 6 or 7. I don't know, actually, if I'm honest. It was quite a long period of time before we sort of even spoke about doing a deal or anything like that. And we just really got to know each other, and we share so many similarities. He's British, I'm British, but he lives in America. I spent quite a long time living in America. I'm back now. He's a twin, I'm a twin. There's so many, it's weird, there's so many similarities between us. Obviously so many differences as well, but there were so many similarities, and I just felt like he believed in me. And I think that's a really important thing you want with anyone who works with you. And then, like, Arista, just the legendary acts from Whitney Houston to Usher to Avril Lavigne to Aretha Franklin, Prince. There's so many acts that have been on there. You're just like, oh,
yeah.
And then little me now, but yeah, it's exciting, and it's like that I've got a great relationship with everyone over there, and yeah, they've been nothing but super supportive for me and allowing me to make the music that I've always wanted to make.
Yeah. And how do you feel like your kind of career has changed in terms of being on a label versus being on Sony? Because one thing I noticed, you were mentioning like the kind of the money that has to go into just being an artist nowadays. And when you look at the music video for Speeding, it's like, it's very high. It has high production value. You can really see like the money on screen kind of. Yeah, I was wondering, like, do you think like in those ways, I mean, obviously there's kind of more financial backing, but in general, how do you feel things have changed for you?
No, 100%. Yeah, everything's got a little better, which is what you would expect. But I think I often talk about this quite a lot, is that you, as a creative, any form of medium, be it TV, film, music, it really is probably it should probably be one of the most collaborative sports that you take part in. But actually, there's this idea that you're supposed to make music in a silo. It's supposed to just be you review it, you mix it, you sing it, you rap it, you write it, you produce it, all of this by yourself. And actually, I'm not saying that this never happens, but like the chance of that being great are not going to be that, they're not that high. Like music is supposed to be collaborative. It's supposed to be your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts being shared with everyone, and sort of like finding a common space, a commonality between everyone to try and channel that into like what serves you as an artist, but also what just sounds amazing at the same time. And I think sometimes when you're an independent artist and you're doing that by yourself, it can be really difficult, because you are paying the bills, making the music, you're doing everything, and you have no one to sort of bounce back at those ideas and go like, is this great? Does this work? Is my idea good? Is this like, whereas now I would say, and I'm sure that people argue there's a fine line between that. There's a space where there's too many people giving you their opinion, and too many too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that that hasn't been the experience I've had. I found it really sort of great to have people I'm able to bounce back with on ideas and go like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I'm thinking we should do this. And they give me their thoughts. And it's people I respect, from my managers to my A&R to like marketing people. Like it's just a great space to be in. And if you find that space, the answer is, if you find the right space for you to do that, it's always the best to be collaborative in any sort of creative field.
Yeah, and I notice a lot of artists I talk to nowadays wear many different hats. It's not just enough to kind of be an artist and a musician and to write music and to make music and you know, and to perform. It's like they have to do like PR, they have to do, you know, they have to do their own booking, they have to, you know, do their own production sometimes. Like it feels like and you know, web administration, social media management, it feels like there's so much stuff that kind of diverts from just creating music and creating art. Where do you feel like now that's sort of been freed up for you mentally, where you can just put all your mental focus into the art itself?
Yeah and no. Like I think you don't have to think about all those things, I suppose, but you still have to. I suppose the industry's changed so much that there's so many new things that you now have to think about. You need to think about social media, TikTok, Instagram, and it's like, as much as you can have people who help you with those things, you still have to do them. Yeah. Like no one at label can film a TikTok for me without me in it, if that makes sense. I have to still feel like confidence in the way I look or what I'm singing or whatever. I still have to show up. Yeah. So I think they found ways to alleviate the pressure, but then they found ways to add more to the workload. But I suppose, like I said earlier, I feel like it's one of those things where if you really want to do music, you sort of have to take all of those things with you, because yeah, it's not, making music isn't just about the music bit. It's so much more, unfortunately, that comes with it.
Yeah, and speaking of the music itself, then, so my understanding is your background wasn't in music; it was in, I think, economics and politics, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering then, when it came time to like making music, what kind of gave you the push? What made you want to do it?
Well, yeah, no, I was what I describe as like a late bloomer to music. Like I was there, my parents do not have any footage of me singing in school, or like, you know, those kids who are like, oh yeah, he was like singing Beyonce at 10 or doing a Michael Jackson routine. I was never that. Like loads of my best friends had never even really heard me sing before. And I think I got to about 18 or 19. I was like, as I just started university, I was like, you know what? I want to do music. And I was like, where's that? Where's that come from? And I met I forget how he met, but I met a producer who, at the time, he'd done a lot of stuff with Amy Winehouse, and a guy called Steve Booker. He had done some stuff with Duffy. He did that Single Mercy. And he just was just like, he really championed me, and like was just like, really gave me, you know, you often hear artists talk about that person in their life that sort of believed in them, and sometimes it's always their mother or their father, but like for me it was him. And like, we don't work together anymore, but I actually saw him recently, and like we often tell that story, that like he sort of gave me that confidence of like, you've got a really, really interesting voice, and like you like recorded it would probably even sound even more interesting. And he sort of pushed me into that world, and I think once you get that bite, it's really hard to come out of it.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to finish my degree. So I finished that in politics, and then I was like, crap, I'm gonna go do music. And sort of, I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah. And that was the other thing I was wondering, was like when it came to actually the music itself, like in terms of the instrumentation, I mean, how much influence did you have over that, and how much did you kind of work with the producers to kind of go, this is the sound I want, and how much was kind of give and take, I guess?
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely been a challenge. I think we Boots produced this record, and Boots has done some like amazing records. He's done, I think it's the whole one of the Beyonce album, or you might need to double correct me. It's definitely a Beyonce album, but I can't remember if it's the Beyonce titled album or Beyonce 4 album. But he's just done so many amazing stuff. And interestingly, Boots and I have a mutual friend who is the manager for the band Run the Jewels.
Okay.
And which I remember I was in the Dominican Republic and Boots was in New York, and he was like, you two should, we were on a three-way, and he was like, you two should, no, it was a three-way text, and he was like, you two should speak. And we got on the phone and we spoke for like an hour or 2 hours, and he just sort of just told me of like everything he was doing, everything I was doing, our struggles, our successes, our failures. Like, we really, really connected. And we just sort of talked about like where we wanted the production to go. And we were going to be in LA at the same time, so we were like, let's do some music together. My A&R suggested another writer to join us, a guy called Marcus Samaj, who is like brilliant. He's done like pretty much co-wrote half of that Giveon album, Snow Allegra. He's just super amazing, and he's also an amazing artist as well. And yeah, the three of us, we just sort of spoke about the direction of the song, and Speeding sort of came out of that first session. And I was just saying to somebody else, we lived with that record for a long time. I'm going to say maybe 2 years. And I can't explain it, but it was something quite broken in that record, in the vocal, like it was a ballad.
Yeah.
Like, I think one day we should just drop the ballad, because I think actually people would be like shocked to the difference of what it was. But I think we all, and I think you get this sort of demo-itis with those things where you're like, oh, I do love how it sounds like this. But we all knew, we had spoken at length about movement and pace and really having these sort of anthemic productions. And I'm a big Coldplay fan, I'm a big Kanye West fan, I'm a big Tears for Fears fan, like, and just trying to pull on all those sort of really big, heartfelt, but yet you feel it, euphoric sort of feelings and soundscapes. And yeah, Boots just did sort of an amazing job, and we just went back and forth for quite a while with it. And I think what he's done now, and not just him, another producer I work with, Malay, does a lot of like Frank Ocean stuff. I think together, the two of them, have sort of, we found a bit of a sound, and like, it doesn't sound, I don't feel like it sounds like anybody else.
Yeah,
it's very unique, which I suppose is probably a bit of a difficult thing for most people. It's like, what does this sound like? Like, I think it sounds great, but like, I think it sounds good, but like, it's not really pop. It's not really R&B. It's not really alternative. It's not really soul.
Yeah,
it's like a mesh of it all. So yeah, but I take my hat. It's been a very long process doing it, but like I think together we've all sort of done a good job in trying to find that, hone in that sound.
Yeah, and you know, as you're talking about, it was like a really long kind of collaborative process. And yeah, did you have like any moments of like, you know, oh, maybe this isn't working, or, you know, did you feel confident, I guess, in saying like if something wasn't working for you, no, or were you just kind of open to anything, like, yeah, let's just try it?
Yeah, no, I'm super vocal. That's probably my problem. I can't hold my mouth. Anything I don't like, I say. But I think actually that was the learning curve in this process, and like having people at the label who sort of have done this before, is that I think I said this to my manager the other day. I've made loads of songs before in my life, but I think Speeding was the first record I made.
Yeah.
And I say that to say that like there is a process to making a record. It takes countless recordings, loads of drafts, loads of versions, loads of different mixes, and like to the point where you can't even discern the change anymore. You're like, what is the difference between draft 56 and draft 47? Yeah. I couldn't tell you. They both sound exactly the same to me. But if you guys say there's a difference, and yeah, it definitely took some time. There were definitely days where I thought, Christ, this is not gonna, we're not gonna get here. This is not sounding right. And you sort of have to trust the process and trust that like the people you're working with are good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you start hearing it, you're like, okay, I'm starting to see the vision. I'm starting to see it come alive. And like, even just like being able to explain what you want that's changed without being the most technical person. Like, so I'm not the most technical musician. I can tell you all the different drum sequences and patterns, and but I'm like, it just doesn't move. The bridge just doesn't move me. The drums, and that's how I talk. And you sort of have to find ways to communicate your language so that they're able to understand you.
Yeah, no, I've heard other musicians talking about this too, where yeah, it's that kind of emotive response, and it is it's I think it's a kind of a dance between the kind of technical side and the kind of emotional artistic side too. And I think that's what all music kind of is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
And then yeah, so you're talking about speeding then. So when it kind of came down, because like we were saying, like you're kind of I think trying to show your new direction. And how do you come across that as like deciding this is what I want as like being indicative of this new sound?
It felt like out of all of the songs that we recorded, it just felt like the first like the introduction. It felt like the record, a record that sounded like an introduction, like a reintroduction. It just felt like, oh, who's this?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't hit you in the face or go for your jugular. It's not massive in its sort of vocal scale. It's just sort of like, oh, this is interesting. I've not heard this before. And I think that's what we wanted. Like we wanted to sort of give people a little taste of what was to come. And then I think the other records that are coming are a bit more in your face, a bit more. But yeah, I don't know. Also, speeding is a indication of how honest I'm planning to be on the rest of the record. So I think speeding is quite honest. So I think you can only imagine how honest it does eventually get.
Yeah. And I think you'd mentioned before, I heard in another interview that you were mentioned that like since speeding was written and recorded, that like your position in life has kind of changed since, and you kind of can't, like in a way it's almost like it feels like a different person on the record. Is that a fair assessment? Or
yeah, no, 100%. I think a lot of these records are like that, and I think that's indicative of most artists. I think you write, especially when the way we write, you write in these sort of cycles, and then the records might not get released for how many years or whatever, while you do all the development stages. And I think for me, speeding is a lot about rejection. And not to say that I don't experience rejection anymore, because I'd be lying, but like I don't experience it to the level that I was experiencing it when I wrote that record. And I think it almost sounds like a different person. Like, and I think sometimes some of the records that are to come, sometimes I listen to them, just like, who is that?
Yeah.
Like, why is he so upset? Like, I think it's really hard to like take yourself out of it and be like, wow, that's what you were really going through, because all you see is yourself, really. And yeah, I think obviously it is me, so I can't deny it and be like it's not me, but like it definitely, and I do still resonate with some of the messaging and the themes, and that stuff will always be relatable to me. But like I suppose I'm just not in that space anymore where I'm like, I think if I was, I probably wouldn't be able to hear those records.
Yeah,
makes sense, because it would be a bit too raw, a bit too like reminding me of those days. Whereas now, a lot of time has passed, and I'm sort of like, oh, I'm happy for that boy now.
Okay, yeah,
he's grown up.
Yeah, so you're able to have a kind of, I guess, artistic detachment where you're able to still deliver the songs, but at the same time, that got overwhelmed by the emotion of what's being said. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, exactly that. Like I think some of the other records, they definitely were like a bit hard to listen to back in the day, because I was still very much in it.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've done a lot of sort of growth, age, maturity, working on myself, if you will. But yeah, I'm in a better place.
In a way, do you see songwriting as kind of journaling your experiences then?
Yeah, 100%. 100. Like for me, I wouldn't say it's deliberate.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going in here going, oh yeah, I want to just tell everyone in this room that I don't know my personal life.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned with me in particular, it's the only way that I can be an artist.
Yeah.
Like that, I really admire artists that can just go in there and sing any songs and just be like, yeah, talk about the strip club today, or I'm going to talk about. I love it. Like I said, I love music. Like I'm not a snob with music. I'm not like, oh, this is better than that because there's a lyrical content. It just, for me, I just can't sing music like that.
Yeah.
it just doesn't even work. Like, I don't think my voice suits it. Like, it suits sort of like that storytelling. And yeah.
I think you were also mentioned before that when you started working in the States, that their attitude was a lot different than what you're used to in the UK, where they seemed a lot more forthcoming with kind of a lot of personal information, and a lot more forthcoming with, I think, like you were saying, everyone in the States tends to be very open about going to therapy, for example. And like, but I was wondering, like, being in that kind of atmosphere, then does that kind of open you up to a bit more vulnerability, perhaps, than if you just stayed in the UK?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. Like, I think you're in rooms with people who are actively, I do the sort of like figurative speech there, actively working on themselves.
Yeah.
And so they're open. It's almost like your emotions are here because you are active. Like, some people, I'll go to a session and people are running late because they've just come from a therapy session.
Right.
So they're ready to talk about their feelings. Whereas here, you're seeing it more. People are definitely getting to that space where people are going to therapy and willing to talk about their emotions. But I just think it's something we just don't talk about here. Like, I don't know any friends. I've got a couple here who are, but they don't talk about it. Whereas in America, it seems to be every other point is my therapist said, or in therapy I learn. And it's like, I quite like it. I've never been to therapy. I am not in therapy, but endorse it for anyone who feels like it's a place that they need to talk, or who don't have anyone to talk to, because I think it's definitely a space to get all of that out. I think it definitely is. I feel like you could be, me personally, I've been more vulnerable in those sessions where I'm working with people who are sort of on the same wavelength for me on that emotion.
Yeah. And then one other thing I want to mention real quick is I believe you're involved with a project that's being produced, a television project that's being produced by the producers of Netflix's Sex Education. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a while now. So it's not much. It's weird. It's not much I can say about it,
okay.
Apart from what's been out there. But no, it's super exciting. It's I could say it's sort of semi-autobiographical. Was that the word?
Autobiographical, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just a really, really, really lovely project. It's been a labor of love of what I've been working on, almost like at the same time as the music.
Yeah.
And it's quite difficult to sort of split the times with it. And it's also just been a real learning curve. Like, everything that's happening right now with TV and film, with all the writer strikes and the actor strikes, like, I'd never imagined myself in that world. And now, like, having this project and like being fully immersed in it, it's been really, really, really just a great experience, and I'm super excited. I'm super excited for more to be released so I could talk about it. I'm super excited for people to see it. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I guess I'll sort of just wrap up around here then. Just, I guess, one final thing. So there has been talks of a full album of music then. Do you think, again, speeding would be a good representative of your thoughts on that, or are you planning on releasing more singles beforehand, just to kind of I don't know, build up your new sort of your new sound, I guess?
But no, definitely there'll be a bunch of singles before any sort of full project. There is a full project that's probably coming soon, but there's going to be a couple more songs before any sort of project, and I'm super really, really excited for people to hear them, because I don't know, I just feel like they sound different. Doesn't everyone say that? They sound different. They sound like anyone else. And I just feel like I often beat myself up about it, because you always thought it's like, oh, it's so different. Will anyone like it? I think you beat yourself about that. Like, and I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's super relatable, the things that I've been through. And like, I really hope people hear these records and find solace and find comfort in them.
Yeah, I mean, even like, if I could just give a personal example, even like when you were mentioning, being kind of rejected when it's coming to putting your music out, and then it just takes that one kind of one person to take an interest to kind of bring your career around. I mean, like, for someone like myself, I work as a freelance writer, and like, I try to explain to people that I think the worst thing isn't even rejection necessarily; it's more just not hearing back, kind of, that kills you. And I was like, but even then, like I can relate that kind of experience to what you're talking about too. So it's like someone doesn't have to have a one-to-one parallel to your life to kind of get what you're saying. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And I think even the rejection that I was facing, it wasn't just in my music, it was in my personal life, in my it was like all around. And I actually think if it was just the music, I would have been I would have been okay.
Okay.
Because you sort of go, oh well, I'm sure you do that. Like when things in your career are going really badly, you're just like, fuck it, well, I've got my friends and family who love me for who I am or whatever it is. But like when it's all around, it's constant bad news. You're just like, oh my God, what the hell? Who have I offended?
Yeah.
Who is doing some sort of witchcraft on me? It's like, is what I kept thinking to myself. I was like, this isn't normal to have this much level of sadness and rejection. And then, yeah, like you said, I think it takes one person to believe in you for you to, and I don't want to say this to sort of like belittle anyone's experience, but for me anyway, to change my outlook on it.
Yeah.
Because because I know that's not easy for everybody, but like it took someone saying yes to me for me to realize actually it's not that bad. Even if he had said no, I now understand the process of that yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is important for people to remember when they're going through hard times. It's like, Adam doesn't like my music, so what? Aaron doesn't like my music, so what? Ken doesn't like my music, so what? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. you're going to eventually get to a point where you're just like, okay, but Matthew likes the music, John likes the music, Sandra likes the music. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's about weighing those things up. And like it, for me, I say that now, having this experience, it takes time. Yeah, it's not something you learn overnight.
Yeah, and I think again, people will resonate with that, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have next to see like where you expand from here.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm super excited to get it out.
I think it's very positive what you're doing, and I really enjoy hearing what you have to say.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this and speaking to me.
Dude, absolutely, it was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you.
Take care of yourself, man.
No worries. You too. Speak to you soon.
Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We hope you enjoyed and stay tuned for more.